Hello and welcome, I'm the Cyber Viking and this is Tools of the Trade. Now, if you've been working in or around IT and cyber, you've no doubt come across the terms of encoding, encryption and hashing. But what actually are the differences between the three of them and when would you use each of them? Well, let's take a look. So first up we have encoding, which isn't actually meant to be secure, it's just changing the language into something that a different system could use, or it can be used for obfuscation techniques. Malware quite often will use multiple different encoding languages to try and put off any anti-malware software that you might have running. So for example, if we wanted to encode this as a test, in base64 it would look like this, in hex it would look like that, and then we have the esoteric language of brain. Now, as I said, these aren't meant to be secure. If you recognize the encoding, you can very easily undo it with something like CyberChef or even just inside the terminal. So next we have encryption. Now this is supposed to be secure. The downside being is that if you figure out the algorithm that was used to do the encryption, you can effectively undo it. Let's see that in action. So say, for example, we have this nice little string here, just 1, 2, 3, 4. And the encryption algorithm that we're going to use is times by 4 plus 10 divided by 2. So that would give us an answer of 2473. So that is our encrypted string. But if you know what that encryption algorithm is, you can simply undo it. So we would just do multiply by 2 minus 10 divided by 4. And that's it done. Now, some algorithms can be very, very complex and will be incredibly time-consuming to try and undo, but once it has been undone, then that algorithm is now dead in the water. So how can we go making encryption more secure? Well, we can do that by using something called asymmetrical encryption, which, as the name may hint at, the encryption and decryption are done in two different ways. So, in our scenario here, we have Alice and we have Bob. And Alice wants to send Bob an email. So she writes her email and she sends it over to Bob. Not a problem at all. Everyone does that every day of the week. However, this time we have the malicious and very naughty Charlie, who's going to be intercepting Alice's mail. So she sends it off. It goes to Charlie. He reads the email and then it carries on over to Bob, who is none the wiser that anything has happened. So what can we do to prevent this? This time, Alice informs Bob, I want to send you an email, but it's got some important information in it. Can you help me out? So Bob will gladly send over his public key. Now this you can send to anyone. You can have it on your website. You can have it on your YouTube description. Anything, it's there. So Alice will use the public key to now encrypt that email. She sends it off. Charlie intercepts it. Can't read it. The whole thing's encrypted. Has absolutely no idea how to undo it. Even though he recognizes the encryption, he doesn't have the key to be able to undo it. So it carries on over to Bob, and Bob then uses his private key and undoes it. The easiest way to think of it is one key to lock the door, and you need a different key to be able to unlock the door. That's how I remember it. And finally, we have hashing. Now, hashing does use an algorithm again, but it works in a slightly different way and the uses are slightly different. It can be used to keep passwords secure, for example, but it can also be used as a checksum to ensure that, for example, the file you've downloaded hasn't been tampered with on the way through. Now, there are a couple of unique things about hashing compared to encryption. First one is that no matter the size of the file or the data that you are hashing, it will always produce a string of the same length depending on what type of hash is used. So for example, if we were to hash password and we use MD5, it would look like that. If you use SHA1, it would look like that. And if we would use bcrypt, it looks like that. So you can see, you can identify which ones they are, but this is where the next part comes in that's quite sneaky, is that you cannot undo a hash even if you know which hash was used, which ordinarily makes it very, very secure. There are, however, some very, very rare occasions where sometimes two different files or pieces of information will produce the same hash. This is known as a hash collision. Now, on its own, that's bad enough, having two files that can potentially produce the same hash. However, with MD5, some very clever and very naughty people managed to find ways of injecting malicious payloads into a file, and yet it would still produce the same hash as if it hadn't been tampered with. So you would have absolutely no way of knowing if anyone had done anything to it. Hence the reason why MD5 is now considered to be obsolete, or at least highly recommended that you don't use it. So if we can't undo a hash, then what is it that things like Hashcat and John the Ripper are actually doing? Well, they're not actually cracking hashes. What they're doing is they're comparing hashes, just doing it very, very quickly. Let's take a look. So while you have been knocking around through a computer system, whether it be a CTF, whether it be a red team engagement, whatever it may be, you have found this hash that you are pretty certain is a password. You've identified it as SHA1. So you run it through your favorite hash cracking program, whether it be Hashcat, John the Ripper, or one of the others. You also give it a word list. And what your cracking program will do is it will take that first word, so for example in this case, admin, it'll hash it using the SHA1 algorithm, and then it'll compare it to the one that you fed it initially. Nope, that's not right. So it'll go to the next word in the list. Password. We try hashing that one. Nope, no good. Next one, incredibly secure password with a capital P, 1 and exclamation mark. Nope, no good. Let's try the good old classic of let me in 1, 2, 3. We hash that, and we have a winner. So we know that that hash that we found is the equivalent of let me in 1, 2, 3. So there we are. That was a very quick and dirty overview of the differences between encoding, encryption, and hashing. If you found this useful, give it a thumbs up. If there's any other tools of the trade that you want me to do a video on, leave a message in the comments. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, and happy hacking.